haggis, but I ordered it from 2 locations because I wasn't sure if they'd get in time.
Yeah.
So one did, but then later 3 cans came. So I will probably just contribute haggis to Christmas this year.
There you go.
A big old fucking pot of haggis.
Perfect.
All right, tilt that mic a little bit closer to you.
This here?
Yeah, just no. Yeah, just physically, if you can bring the whole mic stand back just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Is that me?
All right.
Okay.
How's that? I've got a very resonant. I cannot whisper. Like I went to a play the other night, and man, did I have thoughts. And during intermission, just couldn't say anything because, like, if I said anything, it'd be like, God damn, this is why did they do this with their lives? But like I just have to. Yeah, it's very interesting. But everybody can hear me.
I have that same problem. People, like, I just can't say things quietly.
Yeah, I can't say things quietly.
It's impossible for me.
Oh, I can. And I'm really
you?
fun to sit next to in situations where you're not supposed to say fucked up things, but
nice.
you want someone sitting next to you who says
you can do the
those things.
sniping.
Yeah. This is why my mom used to really want me to go to church with her. Like, she liked to go to midnight mass. And eventually she stopped asking, and I think it's because I was fucking around too much.
Yeah.
With my sister and making her laugh.
I thought you were about to say that, like, she wanted you to come with her.
She did
because
for a while.
you would, like, heckle the priest, but at a low enough level that you wouldn't get in trouble for it.
Well, so that's the thing. I would be doing that, but I'd be making my sister laugh and just mortifying my mother. She's like, can't you behave yourself? And I'm like, I told you not to ask me to come.
This is your fault.
It was my fault.
You were victim blaming.
But you know what? Now I don't have to go to church.
So there's that.
So I win.
So there's that.
I think I'm coming up on the 23rd to Oklahoma, and I think I'll probably go to a couple of churches. My family, when I was growing up, went to Westminster Presbyterian Church. Beautiful church. They've got a really, really gorgeous Christmas Eve service, and I love Christmas carols.
Yeah.
So I'll probably go do that. I've gone and just been this guy that sits. My family doesn't come, but I've gone a couple of years, and I'll go do that, and then my lot, like if I get hit by a bus and it turns out there is a heaven, I line up with the Greeks. Like that's the group I chose. So I'll go. Well, technically the Arabs, because my home church was Holy Ascension, which is like a Lebanese.
Save
church.
it for the emails.
Yeah, that's anyway. I'm gonna go see them just to say hi to everybody.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be a very churchy Christmas for old Heaton.
Oh, how fun. I did the Trail of Lights yesterday.
How was that?
In Austin. It was way bigger than I expected. Like when you hear Trail of Lights, I expect it to just be a walk. It's a full-blown festival. And I think there were hundreds of people that weren't even able to get in because we went on free night, but we got in.
Nice.
Yeah, but it was great. Like bought a bunch of gifts and had hot chocolate and that
Saw
was
some
a
lights.
really cool thing.
Trailed a little bit.
Yeah, but it was really long. I want to say it was at least a mile long. I was surprised.
Did I show you the Christmas decorations that I put up at my house?
No.
I, just so you know, and you'll probably come over and see it later this week, bought an animatronic Christmas Yoda.
Oh, I'm so excited.
That wears a Christmas hat and wishes you and scares the shit out of my neighbors because it has motion sensors on it.
Nice.
So, and it also is looming in my window, which I can totally see when I get up half conscious in the middle of the night to piss. So it looks like somebody is just staring in at me, and every single time just seizes up that prostate in fear.
There are times that I've stayed at our friend Brian Brushwood's compound, and he has a full suit of armor. In there.
Yep.
And when you walk out, because you lived there for a while, when you walk out half awake in the morning, which you have to do to get to the bathroom, and you see what your brain understands as a very large predator.
Like a bear.
Holy crap. Do you go from 0 to awake?
Yeah.
Guys, here, we do have some gifts.
Nice.
We have Christmas cards from our listeners. This is indeed our Christmas episode from Chicago. This is from Lucas.
Lucas, this is lovely. Thank you.
Wishing you and your family a great Christmas season. So thankful for the gift that is your reporting. I can't wait to host you in the great city of Chicago. And we have some Chicago-style hot dog stickers. What did you guys get?
Mine is train themed, which is appropriate for this foamer.
Look at you.
I know. I love it.
I got a sticker that says Andersonville.
Okay.
Which I think might be a Civil War reference. I don't know what but hold on, it says Chicago, Illinois on the bottom. So is Andersonville a neighborhood there?
I would assume it's some kind of Chicago's so
shout
GD
out
big.
to the Anderson, best
Did
part
he
of Chicago.
explain it in the card?
It says Dear Heaton, you have always been the weakest link in your trio.
Wow.
Wow.
But no, I'm joking. It's a very nice, heartfelt thing from Lucas.
That was the.
But it doesn't say anything about
that was the
Anderson,
Christmas card from Heaton's inner monologue.
that's-
that he was
yeah,
reading first. Yeah.
Congratulations, you've made one more year with everybody fighting you out, without anybody fighting you out.
Hopefully the rest of your team doesn't collapse from back failure for carrying you for yet another year. Before we get into the show, let's talk about this news that broke last night after we had planned a very, very lighthearted episode.
I mean, it was going to be, we just went straight in for porn this time around. We were going to do.
We normally save the pornography for the Patreon.
Yep.
AI and pornography almost exclusively on the Patreon. But our Christmas gift to you, the free listener of this show, is we're going to talk about raw dogging threesome action. Hot action on this Christmas episode, and then delve into the pits of hell that are an open email channel after discussing the Israel-Gaza conflict last week. Some.
Were they in complete accord with one another?
Let me just say, friends, the marketplace of ideas was booming. It was booming. But before we begin, actually, you want to know what? From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Andrew Heaton.
I'm Jen Briney.
And we're not wrong. We're all out of sorts here today, but, whatever. Everybody's giving a quarter effort as we lead into the holiday season. No one's really trying, and we are amongst them. Somebody that was burned in the midnight oil, that is the Colorado Supreme Court. In a landmark decision, they ruled that former President Donald Trump is ineligible to run in the state's primary next year, citing a provision in the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. This unique ruling originated from a lawsuit targeting a little-known constitutional clause, and it represents a notable departure from similar unsuccessful challenges in other states. The court declared that listing Trump as a candidate or counting any write-in votes for him would violate the election code, as he is deemed disqualified under the 14th Amendment. Colorado court has temporarily suspended its own decision until January 4th to allow time for appeals, including a potential review by the United States Supreme Court. If the case reaches the Supreme Court before this date, Colorado must keep Trump's name on the primary ballot pending their decision. Trump's campaign spokesman, Stephen Chung, criticized the ruling and indicated plans to appeal to the highest body in our judicial structure, expressing a confidence in a favorable outcome. Trump's personal lawyer, Alina Habba, also condemned the decision, asserting its potential reversal from the Supreme Court. We talked about this in a similar legal push that is happening in California. Other places like Michigan have some of these challenges that are pending. This would be the first legal precedent to push forward any of these. And in the inbox this morning, the person that Andrew Heaton called an incohate said, "Incohate my ass," with the link to this email. So up your nose with a rubber hose, Heaton. What do you think?
I've not read the decision, so could be that there's something brilliant there that I'm missing. But my thoughts remain the same on this. The insidious part, the deeply, deeply insidious part of the 2020 election and Donald Trump's role in it was not the riots, the insurrection that happened at the Capitol January 6th. The deeply insidious part of that was that the Trump campaign went to very specific swing districts and swing states and asked judges to invalidate the votes there. So would go into Nevada and go to Carson County, where 72% of the population lives and leans blue.
Clark County.
Clark County, thank you. And would say, there's been irregularities with this. We ask that the court just suspend votes in this one county, meaning we're going to cut out all the blue votes in an otherwise red state.
Yeah.
That was a deeply anti-competitive, anti-democratic way of trying to rig the game for the outcome that they wanted of Trump winning. So just going, look, just drop votes that are crucial that we don't like using the court system. That was a horrible thing. I'm more bothered by that, I think Jen is as well, than I am of the January 6th riots, which I think were symptomatic of that because they'd been saying all this nonsense in the buildup to it. So I am deeply wary of trying to now fix the outcome that we want in elections by going to the courts to preclude options. I don't think that that's a good way to do it. The way to defeat Donald Trump is through the polls. And I am also just bothered by the idea that we're trying to save democracy. Democracy is under threat. We've got to save democracy. And we can't really trust voters with that decision. We have to stop the voters from voting for. It's so glaringly obvious that there is a threat to our entire system of democracy that we need to preclude democracy from working in it. That does not compute to me. I think that the way to do it is to beat them at the polls. And the other bit too is that if they're going to, again, I've not read this decision here, but if they're going to rely on the insurrection part of the Constitution, the thing that strikes me as odd is Trump was not convicted for that. There were 7 judges on the Colorado Supreme Court, all appointed by Democrats, all meant to be nonpartisan, but all appointed by Democrats for whatever that's worth. It was a 4-3 decision, which means that with a group of jurists there was not consensus on this. And I would say in a situation where it's already high stakes and there's no consensus, the judiciary interpolating itself as an interpreter of that vague and unused law rather than relying on any type of due process which occurred to arrive at that decision is misplaced. So I don't vote for Donald Trump. I think he's a bad choice. I trust the people of Colorado not to make that choice in the long run, but the way to handle this is not to try to remove people from the courts. And the long-term problem with that is, do you think the Republicans aren't going to notice this? Do you really think 2 to 4 years from now the Republicans aren't going to try this same crap? Like, this is not a precedent that I want to set.
Jen?
I agree with every word that you just said. So I agree with you that I think it would be better for the country if he was defeated at the polls and we just said, like, no, we're not interested in this anymore. I could see an avenue to disqualifying him from the ballot if he was convicted of any of it. But at this point, the trials are still ongoing. They will take place. But at this point, he hasn't been convicted, and he hasn't been convicted in the Senate either in an impeachment process. Now, the Democrats, they brought this on themselves by impeaching right away and only for the riot and not for all the things that are actually, going against the Constitution, trying to get a bunch of people to submit fake election certifications in 7 states. Like, that is the crime. Yeah. And he's never been impeached for that crime. So he still could be, but this Congress is not interested in doing so. The courts are still working this out. So it's like this being, Donald Trump being kept off of the ballots after a conviction, I actually do think is appropriate. The 14th Amendment would allow that to happen. But right now, there hasn't been a conviction, and all this does is feed the Trump as a victim narrative. And it is unfair, and you're even putting people like me in a position where I don't want him anywhere near the White House ever again because I don't know that he'll ever leave. I don't want him to be president, and even I am like, this is a miscarriage of justice. I think it's pretty tragic.
So hold on. Let me get this straight. The insidious element of Donald Trump post-2020 election is that he did these things with the fake elector slates by way of applying, from their own words, their own explanations, whether or not we buy them, using novel legal theories as to why they were able to do it, whether or not we agree with them. And so now we're going to stop him from ever doing that again by applying novel legal theories that are breaking new precedent so we can make sure that Voldemort is never spoken of ever again.
Yeah.
That's the solution.
Yes.
Really. Like, it is an in-kind donation from the political angle. Mm-hmm. We didn't know when this year began whether or not Donald Trump being rung up on various different charges and being brought into court for various different things would help or hurt him. There was good thoughts, many of which came from Tallahassee, Florida, that would believe Donald Trump's support in the Republican Party would slowly wane as he was brought up on more and more of these charges. We didn't know how many would be brought. He had 4 lingering. Turns out all 4 came through. And every single time his poll numbers went up within the Republican Party because he was looked at as ever more persecuted. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there is a reasonable way to say that that is not the case, at least here. Mm-hmm. That this is not being done simply because liberal legal theorists had a lot of money put into these kinds of challenges. To throw around words like insurrection without nailing it down, without saying, oh, no, we are pending this on Jack Smith's case, right? The January 6th case, or that we're pinning this on X, Y, or Z, I think is insane. I think politically is poisoning the well to the other possible convictions that might come down. Because now he can say, well, look, they tried to take me off the ballot. An organized attempt tried to remove your ability to even vote for me, even if you hate me. And right now, his biggest problem is with independents. If you look at all these polls that are positive for him right now, if he's convicted of any of these things, the independent number goes way down. So he's not beating Biden, if that is the case, at least according to the polling right now. I don't know if this changes it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it does. Because I think this is insane overreach. And I don't think anyone's going to come out looking good when the Supreme Court strikes it down. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was by a larger majority than 6-3, which is the conservative tilt, or the Republican to Democratic appointee tilt on the Supreme Court.
I hope it's unanimous. I genuinely hope it's unanimous. So at least one branch of government is saying, like, no, this is not how we do things.
Knock it off.
It would also be very, very good for the elections if the court ruling on the validity or invalidity of some legal maneuver was in consensus with itself, so that nobody was claiming that it was just partisanship. That would be very healthy. I want to tackle it from the political angle.
Sure.
I forget how Colorado shakes up. Colorado used to be purple. I think now it's pretty blue. Is that correct? So while it would almost certainly go for Trump in the primaries, because all of the states are leaning for Trump in the primaries. This is a fait accompli come election day. It's not going to go for Trump. So this is in
Colorado, yes.
In Colorado specifically.
But in states like Michigan, which have similar challenges that would now follow this precedent, or would have to take this precedent under consideration, then no, Michigan's going to be one of the states that decides the election.
And speaking of precedent, I was on Twitter this morning because I hate myself, and I was seeing so many people being like, well, you know, there were a lot of other people that took place in this insurrection, which is a word I've never been okay with using. And they're suggesting that members of Congress should be kicked off the ballots as well. And I saw a big picture of Marjorie Taylor Greene being the example, where it's like, where does this end?
Were they, I mean, I would, those members of Congress were in favor, bought the whole big lie thing that Trump was peddling, but I don't believe had any direct role in facilitating people entering
It depends. Depends on who you,
Scott Perry has some dirt on his hands. Andy Biggs, there's a few of them. But just the fact that, like, we're now taking this precedent and bringing it into the congressional races as well, where these are people, not only have they not been convicted of anything, they're not even being charged with anything that they've done. And so the fact that there's already people
that we're only going to draw a circle around the political side of this.
Yeah.
That we're just going to say they're too dangerous to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
One of the two major parties in this country. And I know that this is not a podcast that on balance enjoys the fact that there is a duopoly, but you know, there are two of these parties, and one of them being stricken, at least a generation of these leaders being stricken from the ballot when they appear to be more politically than they have in the past, I think is troubling.
Apologies to Justin, apologies to listeners. Do you know what would be a very good, if you're worried about batshit crazy candidates, do you know what would be a good preventative measure to stop that from happening?
There was butt fucking in
ranked choice voting in open primaries.
Senate Judiciary Room over the weekend. The Daily Caller did not name the staffer, but conservative media outlets have said a name that we've decided we're not going to say on the show, because now the person named in these reports that was fired from his job as an aide to Senator Ben Carden of Maryland, who rumors say reserved this room at the time that these social media posts, which very much seem to indicate the face and other body parts of this person. I'm just going to read the Instagram post.
This is from the staffer's Instagram?
No. This was from another person's Instagram that shows what appears to be a bent over and smiling, wearing only a strappy little number that is not protecting much.
You can see his face.
You can see his face. Oh, he's looking coquettishly over his shoulder. In this very room, Sonia Sotomayor had her confirmation hearing. James Comey testified on Russian interference in the 2016 elections. And this person's name got some thick German sausage and a Jaeger sauce finish.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. That one needs to be in the Library of Congress, that particular Instagram post.
But Homeboy's saying, I didn't do it.
Oh, yeah. He's pulling it wasn't me. This is what he posted on LinkedIn the following night. Quote, "This has been a difficult time for me as I've been attacked for who I love."
Yes, that was the issue.
To pursue a political agenda.
To be very clear on this, the nation rose in a fit of homophobia. That was the issue. That you doing a thing with a gay man? Well, that's not okay. Where is immaterial? It's the fact that two men love each other.
Well, I don't think we've mentioned what he did yet.
We continue. Some of my actions in the past have shown poor judgment. I love my job and I would never disrespect my workplace. Any attempts to characterize my actions otherwise are fabricated, and I'll be exploring legal options available to me in these matters. Did either of you guys watch the video that was posted by the Daily Caller?
No.
Yes, of course.
How would you describe the video as it was posted?
Oh, gosh. It's a guy getting rammed from the back in Amy Klobuchar's Senate Judiciary seat.
I know.
And it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life.
I didn't realize there was footage of this.
Are you going to watch it? Are you going to watch it live here?
Yes, I'd like. Is this? No, that was okay. Jen sent something, but it doesn't look like anybody's getting railed in that one.
No. In the
just the microphone stand.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun because like you can absolutely see his face. So my favorite part of this is like, it's on video. We can see you. We know it's you. And his whole like, it wasn't me.
They caught me in the Senate Judiciary hearing room. It wasn't me.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
All right.
And I get that it's like disrespectful.
Daily Caller, and they got me red-handed banging. So apparently.
No, I don't want to recap you.
Apparently this was.
I just want the porn. God damn it!
I just want the porn.
This was initially sent to a group chat of homosexual movers and shakers in D.C. Somebody among that group leaked it to the wider world
because, of course, they did.
Guys, listen.
And now this is part of his legal thing, but it does bring us back to, I think, online ethics that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Was that our Patreon? Yeah, we were doing the Patreon. Yeah. That like you can't expect once you post things on the internet, you can't expect it to stay secret. You can be upset about it. You can be mad. That man has every right to be mad at other people in that group chat for leaking it. You can never go to brunch with them again. That is your right. I would back his play to say this was supposed to be private and it really screwed my life up. But you can't be mad legally that it's out there.
Yeah.
You did something outrageous and then you posted it on the internet.
And it wasn't a group chat with like 4 people in it. Apparently there were a couple dozen people in it. So it's kind of public once it's such a big group of people. So yeah, just the expectation that something like that wasn't going to get out because that is just content gold.
I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of gay American culture, let alone gay DC culture. But I would take a wild guess that if I needed to keep a state secret, throwing it to 36 gay dudes might not be the best plan.
Listen, listeners. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays from Lord Uncle Heaton. Let me give you a little present. This is a gem you should remember for the rest of your life. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. And if the secret you have is railing somebody in a Senate judicial chamber, you're absolutely going to get out. That's if I were Ben Carden, I would just be pissed off at the incompetency of this. If I were Ben Carden, this is what I would say. Listen, there's plenty of places in the Capitol you can drink, fight, and fuck.
Yeah.
You can do it in supply rooms. You can do it in my office. I certainly have. You can do it all these ways, but just don't do it in the goddamn chamber. That's something that we pretend is sacred.
Yeah.
Doing it and posting it on the internet would be something that'd be a bridge too far for Ted Kennedy.
Yeah. And don't fucking
Ted Kennedy's Force Ghost is like, what the fuck?
Well, that's the other. Don't ever. Okay, another thing, everybody. Don't put anything on your phone that you don't want in the New York Times. That's just basic stuff. If you like, I won't get into it.
Don't be a prude.
No, yesterday a guy called me and opening line. Hey, I didn't want to put this in writing, but I need to tell you something. Opening line to a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Everybody should get more familiar with that kind of thing, because if it's something, like we all want to rail that hot staffer in the chamber, but you put it on your phone, it's going to get out there. Don't record it. You don't need to record it. Live in the moment. Why do we have to do all this Instagram, Snapchat stuff? Just live in the moment while you're plowing that guy. Enjoy being there for its own sake. You don't have to capture it on film.
What a boomer take.
I know. My question for you guys, though, is like homo or hetero sex. If it wasn't filmed, if they just kind of like did it, are we really that upset about having sex in that room?
Yes, I am.
Why?
No, I mean, I do. Come on. There's got to be some line of
I am
like this is the people's house. If we are upset with a bunch of hillbillies running through and the idea of pooping in Nancy Pelosi's drawer or
Chewbacca
whatever.
in a fur bikini stealing a podium.
But that's actual damage. This didn't actually damage anything. If no one knew about it, like I don't think I
You think
give a shit.
Do you think Amy Klobuchar's not going to be upset about some thick Jaeger sauce ending up on her chair that she has to sit in while she might be questioning?
know if there's sauce
she's
in the
going to have a
chair.
towel on that seat
No,
for the
it
rest of the
says,
time?
at least according to this, a thick Jaeger sauce finish.
So
That is an internet meme. We don't know if this is scientific evidence.
This was in the initial Daily Caller post, and it seems to be original media.
So if I get, having worked in the House before, not during work hours ever, but after work hours, I've had lots of drinks in the Capitol. And by the way, that's very common. Washington, D.C. is just, it is marble floating in a sea of bourbon.
Yeah.
Every single office in the Capitol, 100% has alcohol in it. And you're thinking, not my office, it's in Utah. Fuck you, you're wrong. Yes, there is bourbon in your office right now at this exact time. Every single office has bourbon in it. But again, you drink after hours, and there's a social environment. Maybe I've played Nintendo Wii and some beer pong in the Capitol at one point. There is stuff that's happening. I agree. I'm not. First of all, the gay sex is immaterial. It's the sex, right? It doesn't matter who it is. It's just the act itself. I'm not particularly offended by it. I don't think of Congress as a temple, but like just as a workplace, if you were in any workplace environment and you got caught fucking in a conference room, we'd fire you. Like that is not a good workplace environment. So,
but that's the thing. It's the getting caught. If you don't get caught and nobody knows and there's no damage to the building.
You know, let me say this
Where
right now.
do we put? Where do we
for-
put a cum stain in terms of damage?
First of all, I don't consider
If homeboy left a map of Hawaii on Amy Klobuchar's chair, like, where do we put that? Where does that count as damage to the state?
Years ago, the first paid political job I ever had, very, very briefly, I worked for John Bercow, who was a member of the House of Commons in the United Kingdom, and I was just doing some temp work for him. But as a result, I got to go on a personal tour of Parliament, and they took me to the House of Lords, which is where the House of Commons met during World War II, because the House of Commons was bombed. And they right there, that groove there, you see that groove? That's where Winston Churchill banged his fist into the table in support of the war effort so hard, so often that it made a groove. And I went, can I touch that groove? And I ran my finger through. How great would it be if, in addition to that, and that stain there, that stain was one of Ben Carden's, a thick German sausage.
I mean, I promise you, anytime I see the Senate Judiciary now and I see Amy Klobuchar in that chair, this is all I'm thinking of. I'm going to be giggling.
Yes!
It's so funny.
To be clear, people are also fucking in the Capitol. Like, I never fucked in the Capitol, but just so everybody, the demographic here is like median age 28, maybe 26. Yeah. It's like working for Congress was more like college than getting a graduate degree was. Graduate degree felt less like college than Congress. Congress is awesome. It's super fun. Everybody, if you're just looking to do a vacation, call up your congressman, see if you can become an intern. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll have a lot of parties and shit. Downside, you get yelled at by old people on the phone, but you get drunk at like 5:30 and you make out with people from the other party in the stairwell. So it's definitely happening. I'm just saying the conference rooms are far enough.
It should feel dangerous.
Yeah.
But danger means if you get caught doing it, then there are consequences.
Well, absolutely. And like, I just want to be clear that if I were Senator Carden, I would have fired the guy. Yeah. It doesn't look good. It is disrespectful to the institution. But I guess being completely serious here, when I think about disrespect of the institution, the members of Congress just giving away their power to the executive branch every single year in one way or another. The fact that President Biden is sending weapons, circumventing Congress, like that's more disrespectful to the institution. No, you can go ahead and fucking like, I want to be serious for a second, because when you talk about disrespect of the institution, to clutch your pearls because someone had sex in the halls of Congress, but like, there are things that are worse for the institution than this.
I agree.
I think you're right.
I agree.
Normally, Congress is fucking us, and that's not as bad as staffers fucking each other. I'm not in disagreement with you.
Because we don't get a Jaeger sauce finish. But also, we have a bipartisan sex scandal block here. Moms for Liberty, a Florida-based organization with over 300 chapters in 48 states, which advocates for parental rights at all levels of government, have pushed for bans on what they describe as sexually explicit books in school libraries. But now, one of their co-founders in hot water for her conduct outside of the school boards, Bridget Ziegler, the group's co-founder and member of the Sarasota County School Board in Florida, is now involved in a sex scandal with her husband, Christian Ziegler, who's also the chair of the Republican Party of Florida. Specifically, a woman has claimed that she was involved in a consensual three-way with the Zieglers. The woman agreed to a repeat performance, but when she was informed that Bridget would not be able to participate, she demurred. She alleges that Christian then came to her apartment and assaulted her. Governor Ron DeSantis has called for Ziegler to step down as the chair of the Republican Party of Florida, and Bridget Ziegler faces calls for her resignation from colleagues on the school board. This week, Christian was censored and stripped of responsibility from the state party. So, any thoughts here?
This one's less fun because it involves assault.
It does. It does. This guy ruined what appeared to be a pretty sweet deal.
Hilarious story of two social conservatives from Florida having a three-way. That would have been really fun. I asked this just out of general. When we say assault, like did they elaborate on that? Like, was it like
there are more?
Or,
I can take this one.
Yeah.
So it was the woman that they were having the threesomes with.
Right.
It was supposed to be all three of them. Mrs. Ziegler didn't show up.
Right. So he's just gonna bang somebody. Yeah.
So he shows up, and there was allegedly a rape involved. Now there's a video of this, and I have not seen the video, but it is putting some of her claims. So
these are very serious, high-level assault allegations.
It is at the very least messy. It is at its most serious something that he should go to jail for.
If convicted, yeah.
If convicted, I mean, at least the severity of the crime,
right?
Is that
the only reason I ask that is that assault could have a very wide range of actions that's in it. So I wanted to see where it was in terms of the spectrum.
In any of these situations, you always want to be careful when there was a consensual sexual relationship that then
that's right. Whenever I have a three-way, I always preface it with I had a consensual three-way last night. But you put in that consensual word just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
There was one detail in there, though, that I wanted to ask you guys about, because the people that want to punish Ziegler, instead of
which Ziegler?
The
Ziegler, Boy Ziegler.
Boy Ziegler, who's the chairman of the Florida Republican Party. Yeah. So instead of just kicking him out of office, they want to do something that I've seen the Republicans doing a lot lately, which is reduce his salary down to $1. And I've seen this a lot in our Congress. There's at least 6 members of Congress that in various funding bills, the House version, instead of, they can't fire this person, so they want to reduce their salary to $1, hoping that they'll quit, because why do a job if you're not getting paid for it? But now we're seeing it on the state level too. What the fuck is this?
So, to be clear, he has been stripped of his responsibilities and he has been censured. I don't know the mechanisms of how you depose the chairman of a state party. I don't know if there's a certain cycle for which, they want to protect inter-party fights turning into we're going to replace the head of our party whenever there's enough people. What are we? The House of Representatives? But
this dollar strategy.
The dollar thing, I don't know. It's the new way to prove that you're doing a thing.
Well, it is also, my guess, I don't know anything about this, but my guess is just on its face, what you're telling me is there's probably more legal mechanisms in place to get somebody fired than to defund them. Where to there's a position which Republicans don't think ought to exist. It's superfluous, but in order to remove that position would require the Senate and Congress abolishing that position. But the funding is just done through the House. So I could see a situation like that of functionally eliminating a thing, but not having to go through all of the legal du jour steps to do it. So I'm guessing it's something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a way to just it's like firing someone without actually having the power to do so. I just think it's a really dirty trick. And to see the party now doing this on a national and a state level, I think it's something we need to keep an eye out for, because I think it's really undemocratic and it's really bothering me. So to see it pop up in this story, it's like this idea is spreading.
Yeah.
I really don't like it.
It's a way to show, to like what we are in an era of measurables. As we saw, it's not just enough to say Donald Trump is an insurrectionist. You have to say Donald Trump's an insurrectionist who therefore should not be on the ballot. Like, do a thing. Give us a measurable reason why you are a true believer in this cause. That's the key. That's the number one thing. And so this is another way to prove that we'll take away your money. We'll make sure that you get paid $1.
It's just
Don't spend it all in one place, nerd.
Childish, and I just see all of these politicians getting more and more childish. I hate it.
What evidence do you have of that over the last 5 years?
I know.
Can I ask you guys, this might just be a Florida thing, but I don't know, so I want to ask you guys. The certified freak in their 20s turning into super conservative firebrand's pipeline. Because it is something, as I've gotten older, and I knew the girls that were going hard. And I looked at Bridget Ziegler and I'm like, I feel like I know exactly who you were in your 20s. And I feel like I know exactly why you are now. Because multiple girls I knew that were absolutely the last ones to leave the bar, the ones that had the colorful stories of people they went home with, almost to a woman, are Bible quoting on Facebook, politically active kind of people. So I don't know whether or not that is just a Florida thing or if that is a nationwide thing.
Not only how shall I? Some of the more interesting sexual situations that I have been in have been with conservative media and people that are very conservative and very, quoting the Bible to that kind of thing, that were a hell of a lot of fun, if not pushing some envelopes for yours truly after hours. And I think, I don't know, my take on that partly is just...
Go on.
Well, now I'm going to make it wonky.
Brag.
This isn't going to be... I'm trying to be as opaque as I can.
Yeah.
This is not a sexual term. You know schismogenesis? Do we know this term?
No.
Fun term. I just learned this the other day. I was talking to Greg Lukianoff, who will appear on the Political Orphanage next year. Schismogenesis is... I am going to determine my beliefs in opposition to your beliefs. So, Justin, you were in favor of transgender people. Well, I'm against transgender people.
Sure.
Or conversely, Justin, you're for free trade. Well, I hate free trade. Whatever the thing is, right? I think schismogenesis is running amok in our country right now, where a tremendous amount of people make they make their identity in opposition to somebody else. And I think that there's also a significant amount of people that they're just part of a tribe. I'm on team elephant or I'm on team donkey. And I was
so into this just so I can call people schismogeneticists.
Yeah.
I do want to stand up for the conservatives that I knew in high school, because honestly, I found them all, the people that would quote the Bible and stuff, I think they meant it, and they were usually the
I don't think that's who he's talking about.
I'm not talking about them.
No, but I'm saying that I didn't know a lot of conservative girls that were behaving that way. It really...
That's not
again,
what
I don't
I'm
think
saying.
that's who we're discussing.
What are you saying then?
I'm saying
the wild ones that
freaks,
come back. Yeah.
The straight hoes, they turn conservative.
Yeah, and I'm saying
all the girls that were, all the horse girls that were quoting the Bible back in high school, I think they, by and large, the ones that I knew, they found quiet husbands and they have quiet kids and they all wear glasses and they're adorable. It's the ones that were out all night that were not conservative, that were the opposite of that.
I've kept an eye on them.
Yeah.
And no, they haven't switched to being conservative. They're just like not politically active at all.
Then maybe it's a Florida thing. Maybe it's just something in the swamp.
Being a uniter, not a divider, I think there's a lot of people with really fun sex lives that fall across the political spectrum.
That's true.
You would find that in the Democratic camp and the Republican camp. But the Republican camp, its tribal colors and sacred words and things like that involve Jesus and involve a lot of rhetoric around that. And so you're going to find people like that, which, if all of this had been consensual, I'd have no problem with it. I don't care. Like I'm a hedonist, but you're going to find people that are, doing three-ways and doing swingers parties and things, which, by the way, also, I didn't get involved in any swinger stuff when I was in D.C., but that's a thing.
That's there?
That's there. I know some people.
So Madison Cawthorn was right?
Maybe. But at the same time, though, I think the Democrats could be a little bit more open about that. The Republicans kind of have to simultaneously be like, I'm stodgy. Here's my picture of John Wayne riding a horse to church. Also, I'm going to rail that one tomorrow.
Well, and that's what they said in the story, especially with Lady Ziegler. It was like, it's not the fact that you were having threesomes, it's your hypocrisy. Because
I don't know where that's... I don't know. That issue, like, obviously... It's anytime your sex life, your private sex life becomes public, it is embarrassing for one reason or another. And there are a lot of people that don't like Moms for Liberty or don't like the bills that have been put forth in Florida, but their pretty narrowly stated issues are parental rights in schools. That doesn't necessarily create a one-to-one of precluding her being able to F a unicorn with her husband.
I don't know the details on this, but I've not looked into these Florida laws and things. They could have a point in that school libraries have a limited amount of shelf space, which means at some point we've got to make a decision on what we want to put in there. If somebody were just donating books to the library that everybody thought was inappropriate for kids, I wouldn't see that as censorship. If somebody was
Tales of the Senate Judiciary Committee,
exactly. Like if it were Tales of the 100% that kind of thing, or like conversely, like if there were if somebody were giving books to the library of homosexuality as a sin, conversion therapy, like I could also see that the school going, this isn't really appropriate for a school library. That organization, I don't know this organization at all. They might very well be doing that, and if that was their narrow remit, then her social life would be unrelated to it. It would be everybody assuming that a group trying to enforce parental rights would be socially conservative. But I don't know whether she ever purported to be that. I don't know whether her and her husband were going out, talking about how they saved themselves for marriage and marriage is a sacred institution. If they weren't, I don't know. And again, the assault would be the problem, not the hypocrisy.
At least that's not the there have been pushes, including in Florida, to bring in more religiosity into schools. And I guess you could draw a line between we want more parental involvement. And if parental involvement means that we need to be teaching the 10 Commandments as, literal law or something like that, then that would draw in more of a moral code that would preclude really coveting your neighbor's wife, or I don't know if the unicorn was married. But still, I don't know. I mean, beyond that, it's like, look, she's a controversial figure. Moms for Liberty is a controversial organization. It is at odds with the teachers union, which is very, very active and very well funded. And so it doesn't surprise me that when something embarrassing about her comes out, that they're going to use it as a cudgel to beat her as hard as they can. I just, the hypocrisy thing didn't stick to me.
No, it didn't. And I'm not a pearl clutcher when it comes to...
whatever ended up on Amy Klobuchar's chair.
I'm just not a pearl clutcher about sex in general, but I noticed that the people that were angry at her, that's what they said.
Yes.
But for me, I didn't think that Katie Hill should have had to leave Congress. There's been a lot of sex scandals.
Well, she had to leave because she was still dating staffers.
Her staffer,
that had become a big deal post Me Too.
Yeah,
because of power dynamics.
I don't get upset about this stuff the way some other people do.
Jen, have you, forgive me if I've asked you this before, have you read The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt?
No.
I think you'd really enjoy it. I think, and I commend it to listeners of this program. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Jonathan Haidt wrote this book, The Righteous Mind, in an effort to explain why is it that conservatives and progressives and other people are so vitriolic with one another. And he developed a theory called the moral foundations theory, which by my reading is kind of the idea that we have moral taste buds. So in the same way that we go out and have lunch sometimes, One of us might be very, very, very attuned to hot, spicy foods and just can't handle hot, spicy foods because they've got such a subtle palate. Where somebody else, might taste, I don't know, what the stuff that tastes like cilantro, and the other one doesn't have that, right? The same thing works with moral taste buds. So there's how affected you are by seeing other people suffering. There's how affected you are by seeing injustice. There's how affected you are by tyranny, loyalty, and disgust. And like the disgust could be, we go into a bathroom and it's just a really gross bathroom, and maybe two of us are like, oh, what a gross bathroom. But the third person is just like heaving, trying not to throw up. The takeaway from it is that people really do feel these feelings a lot of the time that they have. But like having taken this test multiple times, which you ought to take, and by the way, listeners, go to moralfoundations.org because I'd be kind of curious to see where the audience stacks up on this. I have like no gag reflex according to this, and I suspect you're in the same camp where it'll go through various scenarios and be like, should this be illegal? And I'm always like, nope, you're not hurting anybody. And like it's like gross stuff like Amy
Klobuchar's chair.
We got a committee room for you.
Like a brother and sister who are post-menopause decide to have sex. Should that be legal?
Yes, okay.
And I'm like, I wouldn't. That seems kind of gross, but no, I'm fine with that. But like other people are like, no, right? So I suspect that you probably rank fairly low in that. I know I rank fairly low in that, where I just don't have a very strong disgust mechanism.
Yeah, I'm very hard to offend, but I'm also I'm a feeler. Which is why
this whole
which is why this whole Gaza thing, like why I can't sleep.
So to get into moral foundations theory, there are distributions that happen depending on your political orientation. So there's 5 or 6 of these off the top of my head, as I said. Progressives are very, very high on being affected by seeing suffering in others and by injustice, and are kind of low in the other 4. Conservatives are sort of level on everything. They actually have all of them and are sort of experiencing them, but it's much more balanced. Libertarians just have the tyranny thing. Everything else is very, very low. Whenever I take it, I'm very high, and I think this explains my whole political philosophy, I'm very high on suffering of others and liberty, which is not a combination you tend to get in the United States. But in your case, that would seem to track. If you are very, I would say, considerations of justice and harm are very high for you as a priority, and the other ones are lower, and you would fit that kind of progressive metric that tends to happen.
Yeah, checks out.
I'd be real curious to see how you fare on that if you want to take that test.
He has
sometime.
no feelings.
No. I burnt them all out.
The black soul.
Exactly. Like CIA agents burn off their fingerprints. I've long ago discarded any of my own feelings. I am more a political machine than man at this point. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong is where you need to go. And we got a gift for you, the donors of our Patreon system. That is an extra bonus episode this week discussing how hypochondriacs die earlier than non-hypochondriacs, just in case you were worried about dying during the holiday season. Head on over there, patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. And by the way, guys, we also have another gift for everybody, and that is a YouTube channel. I probably should have had a URL, but just search for We're Not Wrong on YouTube and you'll be able to find us. We got a new channel. We'll be posting shorts and clips from the show onto there. We will have the full episodes up on there. I even discussed with Will, our editor, he was in town this week, about what do we do when Heaton brazenly discusses some element of his sex life that he immediately regrets and then demands that we cut out of the show.
That's why this time I was really plotting and slow, and because man, if I'd said what I was originally thinking was a lot more punchy, that probably would have spooked me. Yeah. So as it was, I tried to just some stuff happened, and just leave it there, and I think I'm okay.
That you Eiffel Tower to Stafford with Sean Hannity.
He's far too patriotic to borrow the monuments of a French country. Did that. I don't know. We San Francisco Bridge to Stafford. I got it.
Wow.
Brooklyn Bridge.
We Brooklyn Bridge somebody. Yeah.
Hey, yo, I'm walking here.
What I was going to say is if you want to look at the YouTube, there's a lovely picture of two bears holding American flags behind us. That's where I was going to go.
And by the ones that live in the woods, not the ones that may or may not have been excited about what happened in the Senate Judiciary Committee. But in lore of this show, the beautiful painting that was in Jen Briney's Montana hotel room has indeed landed in Austin and sits betwixt Jen and Heaton on our set as we shoot our shows.
And
now.
it's not like a print of the painting. They took it off the wall from my hotel room. So yeah, I'm so happy to have it here. I think it's a masterpiece.
Fireworks, American flags, big bear, little bear cub holding a tiny American flag. It's heartwarming. Heartwarming.
God bless America. I know.
We're not wrongpod@gmail.com. No second segment today. We're just going to go right into an extended conversation about the emails that came in this week. Oh, shit. Here we go again. We're not wrongpod@gmail.com. Actually, replacing religion with politics is a good thing, right? I'm a card-carrying socialist, and I, like many card-carrying socialists, express my politics through donating to candidates, voting, and yelling at Matt Iglesias on Twitter. That was until I got convinced to be involved in groups with my local DSA chapter, Food Not Bombs, Punks with Lunch. These groups were available to channel my strongly felt political beliefs into a material political project that fosters community solidarity and meaning by its very nature. My life is better for it, and the community I am now a part of adds meaning to my life that was previously absent. I made so many meaningful relationships. I like to think that my city is a little better for it. Heaton, you decried politics replacing religion. This person has proven you wrong. Do you feel like an idiot?
Could not more disagree with this person. So, hey, I'm glad you found community and enjoyment in life. That's wonderful. Keep doing that. And also, props to anybody that's volunteering in their city. That's great. But the idea of politics is now my religion is a really, really, really bad idea. So, first of all, the organizations that you brought up, DSA, okay, that's political, absolutely. The other two I'm not very familiar with, Punks for Food.
Punks with Lunch and Food Not Bombs.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, Punks with Lunch is like giving food to homeless people, and Food Not Bombs is like a vegetarian cooperative group. Why do you have to make those political? I do not think the politicization of everything has been good for society, friendships, relationships, or politics. I think when we take things that otherwise are just, I'm part of a community group, I also care about my city. I also do volunteering. I've never viewed volunteering as a political activity when I go work with homeless people. I don't think that that's a healthy thing. But more to the point with just the essence of politics being religion, I could probably and eventually will write an entire book on this, but two points for you to consider. One, if politics becomes your religion, the vast majority of that political activity is going to be built around defeating somebody else. Now, in your case, you're bringing up volunteering that you're doing, and again, I give you a plum for that. That's great, or I give you props for that. More hats to you, right?
More hats.
My guess is at the DSA chapter. I mean, I could be wrong about this, but are you not talking about how to win elections by beating other people? I mean, if all you're doing is talking about how do we get social services to people for housing, then that sounds more to me like a charity organization or a community organization than a political group. But with Republicans and Democrats, if Democrats didn't exist, I don't think Republicans would hang out. If Republicans didn't exist, Democrats wouldn't hang out, because the point is to defeat the other team. And having a religion that requires having a bad guy, having a religion that requires defeating an evil team, that is not a good thing for a country to have. Right now, with religious communities, you can have a crusade. You can hate Muslims or Catholics or whatever. You don't have to. I was religious for a very long time. Very few sermons in our church were homilies about how we needed to go out and beat the Catholics. But with the Democratic Republican Party, you're going to have to do that. And then the next bit I'd ask you to consider is this. If you're going to make politics your religion, that is going to make compromise very difficult to do. Jen and I sometimes disagree on political economy, but I honestly think if Jen and I were putting a bill together in terms of how to make healthcare in our country better, after about 2 hours, we would come up with things we both wanted and things that we were willing to compromise on. And we'd be able to get something done. And we can do that because we're looking at a solution to a problem. And we're approaching it somewhat procedurally. When you're doing politics as religion, compromise is blasphemy. It is you're not going to be able to do those things. And I want there to be a competent, functional state. And that is going to be contravened to a situation where everybody views politics as religion, because people aren't going to work together. They're going to infuse blasphemy and heresy into the act of politics itself, which is the last thing we need right now.
Agreed.
Heaton, thank you. You can lie your.
I think I'm done now. Can I just go to the bathroom?
You can lie your lanky ass down and take a little nap. Here we go. Zionism definition right. Zionism is indeed the idea that Israel has the right to exist, but importantly in the context of being a nation for the Jewish people. So in a sense, you are both correct. The asterisk that I would like to highlight here is that Zionism does not say that Israel should be a Jewish theocracy. That extra hop is a political and religious opinion and not a core tenet to Zionism itself. So, as it so happens, Israel considers itself a, quote, Jewish and democratic state, a combination that is fraught with conflicting ideals that is continually being debated and fought over inside of Israel. But again, that is separate from mainstream Zionism. Speaking of mainstream Zionism, having grown up in Israel, I can very confidently say that except for extreme outliers, all Jews living in Israel are proud Zionists, like really the grand majority. So I do see Jen's characterization of Zionism as misleading. It is not a radical ideology unless you disagree with Israel's existence, in which case, okay, yeah, it would seem radical. I do agree with Jen that there are certain groups of Zionists that do wish to take over Gaza and the West Bank. However, it is misleading to label that as the goal of Zionism, because as I mentioned, just about every Jew is a self-declared Zionist, but not every Jew wants Israel, or not every Jew in Israel wants to take over Gaza and the West Bank.
Are we going to continue with the next one, or?
Zionism definition 2 writes, I don't know what Jen thinks Zionism means, especially when she refers to the Zionist government of Israel. Zionism just means you believe that the state of Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state. How could the government not be Zionist? I think she thinks Zionism means eradicating the Palestinian territories or annexing all of the West Bank and Gaza, but that is incorrect.
Okay, so when I'm talking about Israel and Zionism, I am completely aware that there are different people that see the word Zionism as different things. When I'm using it, I think I was called out correctly by that first emailer that I am defining it using its most extreme elements. I think that's a fair criticism. But when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing a differentiation between the Jewish people, which is a religion. We have Jewish people here in the United States. They're all over the world. It's a religion. There's the government of Israel. And then there's Zionism, which both of these emailers and so many others have pointed out that it's Israel as a Jewish state.
Yes.
And so even in the most charitable version of that, there's an entitlement to Zionism, that the Jewish people own this land by being Jewish. And this is the Holy Land. There are 3 major religions and all of the subsects of them that consider this their Holy Land. And at the end of the day, it's going to have to be shared. And the problem that I have with Zionism in general is that you're saying that the Jewish people own this land. Now, I know there are people that are perfectly fine with having a form of segregation. So there's Israel, that's the Jewish state, and maybe there'll be, Palestinian land, which is Arab. A lot of people consider the countries around it are Arab, and therefore, Israelis should get all of the land that they're claiming. I don't know. If the people that live there want to have different pockets of land for different people, as an American, those aren't my ideals, but you do you. I don't care. But there are branches of Zionism that are definitely claiming that land to be Jewish. And what concerns me about that is it puts a group of people based on their religion above all others. I mean, even in the government of Israel right now, if you are Jewish, you are just automatically a citizen. So, and it doesn't matter if you've ever lived there, if you've ever stepped foot on the soil, you can be an American Jew and you just get citizenship. So there's already things in their laws that say because of your religion, because of your heritage, you get rights that other people don't have. And when I am talking about Zionism as a problem, just to give you an idea of when I say that I'm looking at the extreme elements and talking about them, there was a piece in the New Yorker on October 11th, and it was highlighting, it was an interview with a woman named Daniela Weiss, and she's one of the leaders of the West Bank settler movement. And for people that aren't aware of the history, the West Bank there's two different pieces of land. We've been talking mainly about Gaza, but in the West Bank, going back decades, that land has been decided by the United Nations, by so many different places. If there was going to be a Palestinian state, that would be Palestinian land. And going back decades, the government of Israel and these settlers keep moving onto that land, building giant condos. The Israeli government is facilitating the building of roads where only Israelis are allowed to go in the West Bank, completely shattering any kind of cohesion in that society. And this woman is one of the main people who is a part of this. So she gives an interview to The New Yorker. And speaking about the settler movement, she said, quote, "I see it as a chapter in the history of Zionism, and we are in one of those chapters of modern Zionism. Settlement is the way to return to Zion." Then she was talking about, they asked her like, okay, well, if that's how you feel about things, where do you see the borders of what belongs to the Jewish people? And she said, quote, "The borders of the homeland of the Jews are the Euphrates in the east and the Nile in the southwest," unquote. And if you're not familiar with maps, that's claiming parts of Egypt, all of Jordan, all of Lebanon, and most of Syria. And when she was talking about the Palestinians, it was interesting because they said, well, what should the Palestinians do? Are they all supposed to leave? She's like, no. They're welcome to stay. But, quote, "We the Jews are the sovereigns in the state of Israel and in the land of Israel. They have to accept it," unquote. And she also said that Palestinians should have fewer rights in the state of Israel and that they shouldn't be allowed to vote. Now, I understand that is one of the more extreme definitions. Absolutely.
That is a very extreme position that is very controversial within Israel.
Which I understand. But when I'm having this conversation, in order to just like label the issue, I look at that and things that are even beneath that, like versions of that, as Zionism, because I don't want to say that I don't see this as a battle of religions. Like, I don't think it's Muslims versus Jewish people. I think there's aspects of that, but I don't think that Jewish people and Muslim people just inherently hate each other. I think the United States is proof of that. They live side by side. We are neighbors. It doesn't have to be that way. And I don't want to say the government of Israel is the problem, because I think Israel can exist. But I do think that it existing as a Jewish state, the way it is being done right now, is a problem. I really do. And it's like, Israel is a government. Jewish is a religion. Government. But just on the basics, Israel is a government. Judaism is a religion. Zionism is a philosophy. And it has it's got a lot of different aspects to it. But the idea that the Jewish people in that land, that it belongs to them and that they have more rights than others, that is when I'm talking about Zionism in a negative connotation.
You were talking about a settler's form of Zionism.
Yes.
That is what is forming your opinion on that phrase.
Yes, that's when I'm using the term, that's how I'm using the term.
You're using the term as, and you understand that's an extreme form that the vast majority of Israeli citizens, including Arabs who have full rights in Israel as citizens, do not agree with, and is extraordinarily controversial. And that's part of the reason why Netanyahu is as unpopular as he is because he had to make deals with those settlers, the political parties that are run by those settlers. And that's part of the reason why Netanyahu is very unpopular in Israel right now.
Yeah, I'm completely aware that there's a diversity of opinion within the Jewish community, that there's a diversity of opinion between the Zionist community, but the idea that land belongs inherently to Jewish people, that is, as our own emailers have said, like, that is the basis of the Zionist idea. And I don't know what else to call it. So when I'm having these conversations and I'm trying to differentiate between the religion, the government, and the philosophy, that's the word I have to use. I don't know what else to use. So if you want to give me another term that works better, go ahead. But I don't know what else to use.
That's a good constructive way to move us through this. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, despite the fact that Congress shamefully passed a resolution that seems to think so. As evidence, see the Jewish protest in Grand Central Station demanding a ceasefire and the right for Gazans to live in peace. I doubt these anti-Zionist Jews would agree with being labeled anti-Semitic as an American Jew who feels similarly. This distinction is key. The Israeli government does not equal all Jewish people. And I will add that while anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, is the first emailer, or second emailer is, but it still feels weird. I can see and understand how anti-Zionism can feel like anti-Semitism. I fight against jumping to it because not everyone who is anti-Zionist is really anti-Semitic. But what helps me thinking of it is that not every rectangle is a square, in the sense that every anti-Semite is anti-Zionist. However, not every anti-Zionist is an anti-Semite.
I think it's a really good way to put it.
This gets to the heart of one of the most frustrating elements of this conversation that has happened over the last few weeks, and now we're moving into months, is that this is an extraordinarily complicated issue. And it has been fraught for longer than any of us have been alive. I don't fault anybody for coming up with strong opinions. I do fault people for believing that they're easy. Because if you actually care about this, if you genuinely care about this scenario, it's not like there's any shortage of information out there. It's not like people have been writing about this forever. You can learn. You can learn about the fault lines that are here. You can learn about the issues in Israel. That's my one thing about all of this, is for anybody with these bumper sticker opinions, good God, do I wish I just had a portal gun to have you argue with all the Mahmouds and Gilads of that region so you can explain your very simple ideas to them and just let them talk your ear off about more complex things that are happening in that region and their diversity of opinion. Diversity of opinion that includes the following emailers. Hamas fan writes, Hamas no longer wishes to destroy Israel, but even if they did, Israel has been occupying Gaza and stealing their land and resources, so they're justified. This has never been a religious dispute or quote-unquote debate over land. Israel is the colonial power that stole their land, period. Palestinians voted for Hamas because no one else was fighting for them, and that's their right. They are not terrorists. They're resistance fighters, and we have no right to regime change them. All the bullshit about Hamas atrocities were all lies.
Wow.
Hamas fan 2 writes, the "but Hamas wants" argument is so weak, man. I expect that you would not be fond of Israel either if they've been killing your friends and family for the past 75 years. This conflict is very simple. Israel is the aggressor, and since they are a vassal state to the United States, that makes us the aggressor.
I feel like the Hamas fan that kicked this one off was falling into that bumper sticker trap to some extent, Justin, that you were mentioning there.
Yeah, I think so.
So, okay, Palestinians voted for them, Hamas, because no one else was fighting for them, and that's their right. I don't believe Palestinians did vote for Hamas.
They did.
That's one of the
2006.
But it was 18 years
2006,
ago.
and Hamas has never had another election since.
Right. I think we can now retire the idea that it is a democratically elected government at this time, if there's been 18 years since the last election. The other bit that I would add is, like, this is very complicated. There are lots of reasons to the Overton window of acceptable good faith opinions includes Israel has treated Palestine very poorly and Palestine's in a bad thing. I think I still draw the line here of killing and torturing civilians for political end. That's the things that happened on.
But they were all lies.
Yeah, he says
yes, if
all
they were
the
all
bullshit
lies,
about
then...
Hamas atrocities were all lies. Like, do you not think those people were killed in? Like, is this an Alex Jones?
There's like
type?
there's
It
like
never
there's like a
happened?
30-minute mega mix.
That's a hell of a false flag.
Of the body cam footage that Hamas released themselves.
Yeah, they were.
Like,
they
this is
proudly
not-
did it. This isn't up for debate.
I mean, the Hamas spokesperson said Israel cannot exist. We will repeat October 7th again and again until they leave.
Yeah, I watched him say that on Al Jazeera.
This
it's
is
real.
like, I mean, just, when they say it, believe them. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I think is really, really, really legitimate here. Haaretz came out with a report this week that showed there are a higher by percentage. They tried to do some data science on the Gaza Ministry of Health stuff that came out, which I will say rightfully can be suspect. and has been suspect in the past. The Gaza Ministry of Health has rushed to judgment on certain death tolls, like the hospital that they said was destroyed. It turns out there was a rocket that was fired from one of their own sides that landed in the parking lot. They said 500 people died. So let's understand that you can be skeptical of them. Haaretz said, based on what they have put out, this was unlike other situations in the past where they gave names, ages, and genders. And so if you only take them at their word and remove fighting age men, and let's assume that every fighting age man that they had listed was Hamas, so let's even take it from that perspective, that this was by far the highest civilian death toll of any Israeli incursion that has happened forever, right? And it was like 64% of all deaths would have been, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health, non-civilian combatants, only saying women and children, right? People that would not be fighting age. These are legitimate things to talk about. This is not a denial of the humanity that is being lost here. But let's understand the reality of the situation and this Disneyfication of Hamas, because we want it to very cleanly fit in to our modern ideas, Western ideas of social justice, I think doesn't get us closer to understanding what is happening. That's my opinion on this.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about this email, the second one, because the first one, like, as the person who's getting accused of being the Hamas apologist, October 7th was horrible. It was real. And I understand that this email was probably written to defend me. What Hamas did, those were not lies. So I don't like that at all. But the second person said, right now, so we're talking October 8th on forward, we're talking 9 out of the last 10 weeks, Israel is the aggressor. And since they're a vassal state of ours, that makes us the aggressor. That is one of my main concerns here, is that we are complicit in an ongoing tragedy happening in Gaza. And so if I'm focusing more on Gaza, it is because there's been 0 civilian deaths since October 7th, as horrible as that day was in Israel, where Gaza is having their version of October 7th every single day now for over 70 days. That's why I'm putting more focus on it. I care about all these humans. I care about all of them equally as, strangers, but I think they all have value. And we're only funding one side. So we don't really have any control over what Hamas does. We are complicit right now in what Israel does.
Yeah. All right. Turn the other cheek writes, this is an eye for an eye religious war between adherents of both sides who believe roughly that they are superior, not just in belief, but in actual value of life. The opposing nations, Israel, beyond Gaza, Iran, are not secular governments. There are no universal civil rights. Everyone does not have recourse to the law. There is us and there is them. We are all overcome with emotion amid the horror of the current round of this conflict, but we are naive and ignorant of the colliding forces. This fog of war is dense, and this war is older than we are. Aiding the injured, sick, and starving is necessary. Negotiating or trying to negotiate a lasting peace is noble, but be very hesitant to enter this fray in either actions or words. Being perceived to pick a side is indistinguishable from picking a religion, and I would give the same advice to the U.S. Congress.
That's good advice.
A well-written message. Thank you.
Disappointing, writes, I am disappointed that no one brought up the hostages that are still held captive in Gaza, including 16 women and one as old as 70. And if we are discussing that, I believe that there are still 3 American citizens that are being held by Hamas. And I would say, as American policy, that before we get into any discussions of calling for a ceasefire from the American perspective, I think American citizens probably need to be released. And I don't think that is a particularly controversial position. I think that it is something that we have built into American citizenship, that when some fat oaf takes a wrong turn at Albuquerque with his boat and gets taken over by a teenager, a Somalian teenager, we send elite killers to go kill the teenagers who took over the boat. There is an expectation as American citizens that your country will look out for you. And if we are going to flex our muscles and we are going to say that a material benefit that would happen for Hamas would be Israel stopping the bombing, then we at least need our people out. That I don't think that's unreasonable.
I agree with that. I also, this one sentence email was actually the one that got me the most triggered to be a wokey about it. First of all, I really don't enjoy getting feedback and attacking us for things we did not say. I will take responsibility for the things that I did say, but it bothers me when people come after me for things that I didn't say. And when it comes to the hostages that are in Gaza, in the last episode, I was advocating for the bombing to stop, the indiscriminate shooting and bombing of 2.2 million people who are currently in Gaza, who are all in danger because of the indiscriminate nature of these shootings and bombings. That includes the 130 hostages because they are currently in Gaza. And like I said before, all of those lives have value. I don't think that
some hostages have been shot by the IDF.
That was the next thing I was going to say, because with the indiscriminate nature, these 3 hostages, I feel so bad for them. It was 3 men. They somehow escaped Hamas. This was going to be the end of their nightmare. The end of their movie is running up to the IDF. They are waving white T-shirts as white flags, as in "We surrender." They're yelling in Hebrew. But because Israel is shooting anything that moves, they killed the 3 hostages. There are massive protests in Israel over this right now. So when I was talking about indiscriminate killings, it is affecting those hostages too. And I think advocating for that to stop is advocating for the hostages, but I don't feel the need to point them out separately because I don't think their lives are more valuable than others. There are 2.2 million people, the vast majority of them innocent people, who are being put in danger every single day in Gaza. And I think they all matter.
I do think that those hostages being released would be a material way to wind down the war.
It would help.
And that is something that Hamas is unwilling to do because they are bargaining chips, just in the way that a lot of, I believe, they view Gazans are bargaining chips. They view dead Gazan bodies as bargaining chips.
I agree.
Like, that's, again, like, we need to understand this. At least I understand this conflict. You can do whatever you want, folks. But the way I understand this conflict is, like, let's not minimize Hamas here. Hamas picked, one of the Hamas fan people, they wrote many emails. One of the things they pointed out was that Hamas changed their charter to say that they recognized Israel. And that is true. Hamas did change their charter to say that they recognized Israel several years ago. And it was that changing of the charter that led to a lot of negotiation within the Knesset, within the Israeli population. The thought that maybe the people that the Hamas leadership that's in Qatar, the Hamas leadership that is in Gaza now, were turning the page, and they wanted to be more of a form of government and less of a terrorist organization. They wanted to turn a page, and there's a reason why they started granting more licenses for people to cross from Gaza into Israel. And now, regardless of what was said in changing their charter, obviously Hamas was still very interested in carrying out terrorist attacks like they did on October 7th. Hamas picked a war. They kicked off a war with an enemy they knew would overmatch them, and they knew would raise maybe not this level of a body count, but they had to understand if their strategy was to hide until Israel stopped bombing because of international pressure, which I don't think there's anything to say that wasn't at this point. Their strategy isn't their strategy at this point.
Well, isn't it tragic that it worked?
Well, again, it's like, well, this was the idea, to dig a hole so deep that the bodies that land on top of it will be so disgusting to the rest of the world that eventually they'll be able to crawl out of their hole, say, we are the righteous sort of retribution for what Israel has done, and they'll be able to stay in power. Like, that is what this is. And we do need to understand Hamas's complicity in this. Now, we can understand what the IDF is doing. We can say this is a unacceptable level of civilian death. We can be mindful of this from our perch here in the West. But again, I'm getting into a circular argument on the Disneyfication of Hamas, but that's what's bothered me a lot. Okay, we're done with those emails.
And Justin, thank you for dealing with those emails. I appreciate it. It can't be easy.
Yeah, I'd be probably a bad idea. I'd be really curious to do polling of the audience, because I don't know what the lay of the land looks like.
Hamas, good or bad?
Yeah, I was just like, are you more sympathetic to the Palestinian or Israeli plight? Like, I would be interested, like, on my program, the political orphanage, some things like 95% agree, and then there are other issues that are like 45-55. And it's always interesting to see where there's intellectual divisions take place. And I'm just kind of curious.
I don't think that's an easy poll to take because I wouldn't know how to answer that question. Yeah. I mean, despite what other people seem to think goes on in my head, like I can see it from both sides. It's just right now and for the last 10 weeks, there's one side that's getting bombed, but I absolutely can see the Israeli perspective. There's, the Nakba was 1948. Since then, there's generations who have just been born there and live there. It's their home and it's their culture. Like, I can understand it. So if you were to ask me in that poll, I couldn't answer that question because there are legitimate concerns on both sides. But like I said earlier, at the end of the day, this is everyone's holy land and it's going to have to be shared. And so if we're not pursuing a solution to sharing and a piece of land that is considered so important to so many people, then I don't think we're on a
Which
path
is
to a
also, I mean,
solution.
again, that's a whole nother thing that it's like a worthwhile conversation. A worthwhile conversation is to say a two-state solution. Okay, who are the partners? Who are we negotiating between? Who's sitting at the table? Who's getting invited to Camp David? Spoiler alert, Hamas isn't going to be invited.
Yeah.
Right? So now who's speaking for the Gazans? Because Hamas is going to say it's us. Right? Palestinian Authority controls the West Bank. They say they don't want to control Gaza.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not that regime changes and there's somebody that says, okay, we're going to do that, Netanyahu, who, again, is one election away from going to jail on corruption charges, who is the only popular thing that he is doing, and anybody in the Israeli leadership are doing right now, is prosecuting this war, including the biggest Netanyahu critics, who spent spent this week calling U.S. senators to draw a straight line between why the IDF needs to continue prosecuting this war and how they're going to do it better. Like, there's a lot of stuff here. This is a very meaty and weighty topic, and it's one that I do think, to go back to one of the emailers, it's hard to look at through a Western lens. It is difficult to look at through a lens where none of the players are secular governments. None of the players will probably ever be secular governments. One of the players is a democratic government and has, rights for other religions within it. The others are not. The surrounding regions are theocracies. They are theocratic dictatorships. So it's hard for us, when most of our conversations are drilling down to exactly what the enforcement of our civil liberties are, what the exact by the millimeter contours of our democratic rights are. We should be passionately arguing about gerrymandering. It's literally arguing about the lines on which our democracy is the most effective. But that's miles away from the baseline of what we're talking about in the Middle East.
I agree with every single word you just said. And I know that I am looking at this from a Western, as an American, I don't even want to say Western. As an American, when I see this, I do understand that the situation is different there. What America gives me hope for is that this isn't an impossible just battle of religions, because America has at least shown that different religions can occupy the same land, live in the same states, live in the same cities, have their communities, and do it peacefully. So when I extrapolate what are humans possible from what has been proven possible in our own country, and that's why, as complicated as it all is, when I do have some hope for maybe these religions can figure this out, our country does give a little bit of a roadmap, because we're proving that religions can live side by side and do it without killing each other.
Medieval historian writes, I was disappointed when Heaton casually slandered medieval religion in the most recent episode. Witch hunts and the burning of witches were an early modern Enlightenment development occurring through the 15th to 18th centuries in Europe and America. In the Middle Ages, witches were liable to pay civil fines for certain practices, like dousing somebody with a love potion or casting spells to cause somebody's crops to fail, and might be called to the church to perform acts of confession and penance. The religion of the Middle Ages was significantly more chill in this aspect than in later centuries. One could say that the Enlightenment's primary light source was, in fact, the pyres of witches and heretics. You can always tell the political orphanage listeners.
Not only could I tell that it's a political orphanage listener, I'm 90% sure that's Michael. Like, I think I know who that is by name. I think I know who it is. Gosh, now we got to get to the really difficult stuff to talk about, which is witchcraft. Whether the witchcraft persecutions occurred in the medieval period or the Enlightenment. Yeah, this is really
For those of you watching on YouTube, Heaton has now arisen from his small bed.
I was
removed his stocking cap and is wiping the sleep out of his eyes. He's now reemerged.
I was sitting there reading Marmaduke on my phone, and every once in a while I look over and Jen's still at it. Yep. Stuff about people getting along. All right, well, he's sitting on the couch now, Marmaduke.
That crazy dog.
Yeah, so fun facts for everybody. The position that witchcraft and Satan are the same thing is kind of a late development. That might take place in the Enlightenment. If you go back to the Middle Ages, like everybody believed in fucking magic. Everybody did. And by the way, we still believe in magic today. People like,
in a young girl's heart.
Yeah. Or like, I don't know, do you not like walk under ladders or anything involving superstition? That's just a word that we Westerners use for magic.
I don't walk under ladders.
You believe in magic.
I don't.
Yeah.
But most people...
My superstition is never talking about Israel again.
Yeah. Most people, or everybody believed in magic. It was a very normal thing. Witchcraft was just bad magic that you were using on other people, and you could pay a fine for it, and people thought that you were doing it to settle scores and things. And it doesn't take place till like around Elizabethan England, a little bit later, in fact, where witchcraft is you are in league with the devil. So I guess point to you in terms of the timeline there. I read an interesting article, I think from the Niskanen Center a couple of years ago, where they were claiming that witchcraft was...
Niskanen?
Huh?
It's Niskanen?
Niskanen Center?
I thought it was Niskanen.
Niskanen. Oh, I don't know. They've yet to invite me to an event. I'll find out.
More hats to them.
The article was the idea that basically the witch burnings that took place in Europe were almost a form of economic competition between Catholicism and Protestantism. That once the Protestant Reformation happens, previously there wasn't any type of religious competition. You just burned heretics at the stake or whatever, but now you get to pick between different religions, and that in disputed areas like Scotland, which was going back and forth, you had a really high amount of witch burnings because basically the Protestants and Catholics were showing the population, look, we're a better insurance policy against witches. We're killing more of them. You don't see that same thing happening in Spain or places that were very firmly Protestant or Catholic. All that being said, the Enlightenment is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to mankind, and the Middle Ages were a dark period of idiocy we are good to put behind us. Michael.
Now, the Andrew Heaton Sports Question of the Week! And this is an interesting one in light of our previous topics. To begin the show, Heaton, should the tush push be punished?
Yeah, that's a great question, listener. There's a lot of things that take place in football that feel unsportsmanlike because they're just not done, but are not against the rules.
Okay.
And the tush push is one of these things where, if you've never seen the tush push before and somebody does it, you're like, they can't do that.
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
How would you describe it physically? How would you describe the tush push?
Okay, what the tush...
And of course, all those fans that love the tush push, they love like eating and drinking certain foods and drinks, right? Out on the East Coast.
Yeah, so
describe it physically.
No, the tush push. Ladies, I don't know if you can relate to this, but gentlemen, if you've ever been in a urinal in middle school and your buddy comes up and he kind of like knocks your knees behind you with his knees, so you kind of buckle. It's sort of like that. You're out on the field and they push your butt.
Whose butt?
The linebacker.
They push the linebacker's butt.
Comes up, and he and the windback and the other fucks, they come up and they shove the guy's butt, and it shoves him over. And it seems unsportsmanlike.
To what goal?
Say this,
to what goal?
Huh?
To what goal? What are they trying to do when they push the linebacker's butt?
Assert dominance. They're trying to assert dominance by they push them in the butt and they fall over, you see, and it demoralizes the other team because they look like fools. But that, you know what?
So that should be punished.
No, I'm saying
that's not unsportsmanlike conduct. If we're already going to
have these guys put on armor and
concuss each other,
I'm pushing each other over as hijinks to assert dominance within a football hierarchy. I think it's within reason.
And the fans of what city should be proud of the tush push?
Baltimore, I think, has more to gain
from
the tush push than anybody else. But, you got to keep an eye on Philly. Yep. Those Steelers. They'll steal your push.
So close.
They'll steal the tush push first chance they get. Horrible people.
Do you want to know what it is?
Sure. What is it?
You can also answer.
Is it a guy? No, I do want to know. What is it?
So the tush push.
I think it's really a dude named Tyler Tush.
No, you were actually really close.
You actually
you were really close.
I thought maybe you studied it for a second and then you kept talking.
I would have been betrayed if you actually looked it up because this entire thing falls apart if you're actually good at this.
So this right is just pushing people over to assert dominance.
So so essentially,
well, they should assert dominance because it's a lot of guys out in the field.
What happens is for the Philadelphia Eagles, they have a very, very good offensive line. But what they will do is normally there is a quarterback sneak where instead of the quarterback handing it off to somebody or throwing a pass, they'll just run behind the line themselves and try to pick up short yardage, like 1 or 2 yards. With
They
Philly,
basically use the fat guys as a wall, and then they sneak under their legs.
The other players will literally put their hands on the quarterback's butt and push.
Oh, brilliant.
Him.
They use them like a battering ram?
Yes.
Fucking A. Go for it.
Yes.
Tush push every game. They're so fucking boring. You stop on the goddamn field every 5 fucking seconds. Yeah, use the fat guy as a battering ram. That's super fucking cool. Do that. Pick him up and use his head to blow through the other dudes. That sounds more fun to me.
Well, Philly has figured out how to do it, and the other teams haven't, and so there's some bitterness.
Other teams, that sucks. You haven't developed new skills yet? Oh, I guess you're going to get wiped out, and you're obvious proxy for warfare. That's how war works.
God, I'd love to see you on First Take.
I know.
I would love just
the other
you,
team's
Andrew,
better.
Eaton, sports.
Why don't we be fucking
week.
French and outlaw competition? Great. Do the tush push.
Well, Stephen A., I think that this relates to ranked choice voting. Veteran Issues writes, I think a large part of the veteran depression and suicide issue is the disconnected feeling in contrast to the military lifestyle. I know many of my fellow veterans have done and witnessed horrific things that are hard to live with, and I don't want those things to be minimized in any way, but there is a stark contrast in connectedness once you get out. The people you work with in the military are some of your closest friends. When moving to a new duty station, these friends and coworkers know people that you can make contact with. Your days and nights are mostly spent with these same people, especially if you're overseas. You're also making stronger connections with these folks because of the stressful circumstances that bind you together. Then when you leave, these connections and networks need to be rebuilt.
I think this is spot on.
Me too.
There's a book that made a huge impact on me several years ago called Tribes on Homecoming and Belonging by Sebastian Junger. Sebastian Junger, fine writer, is a war journalist who embeds in military outfits. He's not a soldier, but was in Afghanistan in the barracks for months at a time, getting shot at. Was there in the trenches with the dudes, and that was the thing that he talked about. Was that it wasn't while PTSD is a thing, that wasn't the predominant issue of people that had a traumatic event they'd witnessed. The overall trauma was being in a super tight-knit group of people where you trusted everybody and had kinship with them and had a purpose every day, and then getting back to the United States and us going, well, get a house and a job, good luck to you, and just having that in complete implosion of a social network and purpose. That I think, to a great extent, everybody in the country is, not everybody, a huge amount of people are already struggling with that feeling of alienation. I think going from that environment where you're super tight-knit and then being flung into that alienation would be horrible. And I totally get why that would be depressing.
Well, and I think there's also, this is such a well-put email, and just to add to it, I think there's also an element of what's known as reverse culture shock, which is when you go away from the place you grew up in, and then you come back and everything looks and feels different. So it's like you think you're going home again, but people have moved on. Your ex-girlfriend is now married. Things that felt so normal to you no longer feel normal. I felt it. I mean, I'm obviously not a veteran, but when I came back from Germany, I was there for 6 months. I felt like I didn't fit in with any of my friends anymore. And it was really, really hard. So to come back and be like, well, I'm going to go home. Well, as they say, you can't go home again. And so I think a lot of times, you think you're returning to a community, and because it feels so different, you feel very much alone.
Yeah. It's like when I first left Florida and found out that in other states, they don't break city council vote ties with a wet t-shirt contest. Backwards. What divides us, writes, acknowledging that nothing boils down to just one factor. We live in a very complex world with a lot of variables and moving parts. But if you had to point to one main primary factor on what has been driving social division in our country, what would it be? Andrew Heaton.
I'm writing a book on this, or have written it and now looking for publishers. I think tribalism's the answer to that, is that we have become very, very, very tribalistic in the United States and elsewhere.
But I think they're asking,
causes the tribalism?
What is the number one tribalism?
That's the really good question, right? Which is I think tribalism's an inbuilt human trait. Why would it be so inflamed? There's lots of different takes on this. If some people would say it's increasing inequality. I don't think that's the case, because you're seeing rising numbers or rising amount of effective polarization. That is to say, just disliking the other team because they're the other team. You're seeing that in Europe as well, which is the egalitarian gold standard. So I don't think it's that. There's lots of different takes on it. I think that technology is the main driving force, because if it were only happening in the United States, we could infer that it is something unique to our political economy or to our electoral mechanisms. And I would love to say that ranked choice voting would be the solution to this, but I think it would be helpful. I don't think it's the main thing.
There's nothing that we love better in America than everything being our fault. We love it.
Geert Wilders just became, I think, Prime Minister or President of the Netherlands, which
his party won. Yeah. Whether or not he will be Prime Minister is a whole other thing.
That being said, though, this appears to be a thing that is on the upswing globally, or certainly within the Western world, which would indicate that it's not something unique to the United States, although we seem to be doing it much harder, much faster than other countries. So
much cooler.
I infer from that the common denominator, given that it's neither economic nor electoral nor cultural, would appear to be technology. So I think that what's happening right now is very similar to when the printing press was invented. To go back to my conversation about witch burnings here a few minutes ago and the religious wars that engulfed Europe.
God damn, we got range.
Prior to the printing press being invented, like Martin Luther didn't have any new ideas. Like those at Wycliffe and a number of other thinkers had all of those same ideas. The difference was the Catholic Church would catch them and set them on fire. Or exile them or shut them the fuck up some other way. There was a monopoly on information. There was a very, very robust gatekeeper for belief structures that existed in Europe. The printing press happened, and now Martin Luther could crank out his ideas faster than the authorities could put them out. And what happened? Now all of a sudden, Europe has to think about, how does religion work? Well, let's just fucking figure this out with swords. And they did that for the next 150 years. They just murdered each other in the street with swords, blood everywhere. It unleashed this tsunami of violence because there was this technology that displaced what had been a oppressive but stable regime. And I think that we are living in something very similar to that right now, where the gatekeepers are dying and waning in influence. So the upshot is that fringe opinions, whether they're good or bad, there's lots of opinions on foreign policy, for example, that are not typically represented in mainstream media. Those are now being able to find purchase within the general population. But it means that from a news perspective, that there's no longer a consensus on what is happening in the world, where there used to be, when there were 3 networks around and they all basically had the same viewpoint. We all operated in the consensus.
There were like 16 people in America that controlled what was true.
Yeah.
And it was the editors of the nightly newses, the 3 different nightly newses, the editors and publishers of the major national dailies, and then the editors of a few magazines. Yeah. But if those 16 people who probably went to school together all agreed on a thing, then it was going to be real. As soon as they agreed that Vietnam was going wrong, America understood that Vietnam was going wrong.
And those viewpoints might well have been false, self-serving, and elitist, but it did mean that there was less discord. And then you move forward to around like 2014, 2012, around that era, we get social media. And I think social media has had the effect of supercharging all these tribalistic impulses we've got. We have an innate desire as human beings to be on a tribe, to promote our tribe, and to seek out and vanquish enemy tribes. That is not a reactive instinct. We proactively want to find other tribes to fight. And social media all of a sudden is giving us this massive tool that we have no coping mechanism for, in the same way that our genes all think we're about to starve to death. Everybody's body who's listening to this program right now thinks we're about to run out of babies. We're about to starve to death. So we got to fucking eat as much as we possibly can.
Hell yeah.
Sounds like a great Friday.
Yeah. But on the eating front, though, like our bodies didn't originate in a world that was full of high fructose corn syrup and abundant sugar and abundant meat and starches and things. It was mostly like, leafy greens and stuff. And so as a result, like you get a bunch of Twinkies in a population and it bombards all of the stuff we want evolutionarily, fast food, things like that. We overeat, we get fat, right? So I think the same thing's happening with social media, where we don't have coping mechanisms in place as a society. We certainly don't have them evolutionarily to handle having a anonymous, non-face-to-face medium that is performative. And that new technology, not just in the printing press way, but in the way of like, we're going to give fast food to everybody, and no one even has any concept that fast food might be bad for you. Everybody fell into that headlong. And so you're seeing this tribalistic impulse just supercharged and shooting everywhere. The good news is that we will eventually adapt to this. We will eventually cope with this. I think that's already happening. I know I've had lots of conversations with friends that are like, I'm not really on social media anymore. I quit arguing on social media in 2012. I was like, I'm not going to lose friendships over Mitt Romney. This is just not a thing for me. And I think a lot of other people will. So I think we will get there. But at the time right now, I think that we are having a headlong collision between our tribalistic hominid instincts and a technology that we've never had to deal with before that supercharges some of those baser instincts in a way we don't know how to cope with.
So I agree on the tribalism part, but this started before the internet. Like, I remember being in my mother's car. God, it was awful. Taking me to school, listening to Rush Limbaugh on the way to school, and Laura Schlesinger. Remember Dr. Laura Schlesinger? Mm-hmm. God, she was awful. And listening to these people on conservative radio that were telling their listeners how to think. And I think once that became so profitable and those people became huge celebrities, I think that was a real big kickoff in the tribalism because there was so much money to be made in it. And then when the news stopped being something that was required to do for a public good and it also became a for-profit model, they leaned into the tribalism, chasing those dollars.
When did that happen?
I don't remember.
Because it's always been for profit.
Well, no, but like Edward R. Murrow, like during the days, like way back then, it wasn't. Back
when we had 16 gatekeepers that decided what the truth was?
Yeah, kind of. I'm not saying that it's the best, but I do think having for-profit news, have it not
They were for-profit then.
Well, you have to admit that what we have is a little different from what we had back then.
It's a very different media landscape. I wouldn't disagree with that.
But I do think, like, no matter when it switched to be, all ratings chasing and all money driven, I think that added to the tribalism because they were able to make money off of it. And I can't blame it on the internet because this happened before the internet. So, yeah, it's tribalism, but I don't know that it's the internet in particular.
You think that greed supercharged the lucrative tribalistic elements and that resulted in our current
relays? Yeah, because I think there's some people, in fact, I think we've met a few of them, that will say things on the air to get the clicks, to get the rage that they don't actually believe, but they're playing a part. And I don't think that Edward R. Murrow was playing a part. I think whatever he thought, he was at least giving the news.
I think he was.
Okay, Justin.
Oh no, I just that's a personal bugaboo for me that I hate the lionization of these people that we weren't really around for. When you actually look at it, like Walter Cronkite is put up as this pedestal of the voice of truth when he was just as partisan and he had his own hobby horses that he leaned on. He blamed Barry Goldwater for killing JFK before we knew anything.
But did he do that on the air?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know anything about that, but I do know that when I was younger, when they were getting the news, it was more, this is what happened today, and less Democrats are the devil, Republicans are the devil, depending on which fucking channel you pick. Like, that's what I'm saying, is like something has switched. Now, whatever you want to trace that to, something has switched, and our media has become more
It's funny
tribal.
That you mentioned, AM radio. AM radio bloomed as, their story that they told their listeners is that this is opposition. Like, Republicans do not get a fair shot. Conservatives do not get a fair shot in mainstream media. The journalists are liberals with bylines. Yeah. Like that was it is the siren song of all conservative media to this day, is that liberal journalists do not care about the things that you care about. They will slander the people that you believe in. They will minimize the harm of the people that they believe in because they are by and large liberals and they will protect their causes.
Poor conservatives.
But I mean, that's you can mock it, but that is the reason why it succeeded. And so they are selling that idea and to their listeners that they would not find a following if their audience did not believe it. Like that is an element that I think is very, very catchy to a lot of people. My thought on this is, Heaton, I believe you are right that it is technology that is kicking this off. And I wouldn't say just the internet. I would agree with Jen. To me, what changed was not this idea of for-profit versus not for profit. I don't think that materially changes the incentives of how you write what you write or what you put on the air. What changed was competition. So before, if people didn't like what was happening between the three major news networks and their nightly news, the only way you'd get fired if you were third out of three. And it was still one of the best jobs in the world to get it and try to, tell your story each and every night. Cable comes along, 24-hour news comes along, news junkies now just don't have to tune in at the same time anymore. Ad rates fall, things get a little bit more desperate, and you start chasing a little bit more. I think that there is something lost when whether or not people were happy about the collective truth. There was a collective truth that was determined by 16 people, but I don't believe that that's a good way to live. I don't believe that having super, super strong gatekeepers. I know many people have this idea that, we just need a benevolent dictator because that would be the best way to go about it. I'd rather embrace the chaos. I think we are in a chaotic moment right now, but I think by and large it's flame wars. I don't think that we're as divided as we think we are. And anytime that we actually sit down and have conversations, usually we're all able to point out, okay, well, that person's a little crazier. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Like there's always going to be nutters, but anyway.
Do you think that like the big money, like I feel like with the advent of cable news and with the Rush Limbaughs on the radio and all that, like becoming a newscaster who preached to a team became big money. Like you don't think that's a factor?
It was always big. I mean, the Pulitzer Prize is named after Pulitzer, who founded it because he had so much money. And that era of like Pulitzer, I mean, we went to war with Spain because newspapers just made up bullshit until we were able to froth the masses into going to
remember the Maine.
Yeah, like it was all. I mean, like literally, we had we had newspapers for profit for their bottom line, starting a war with another country during the golden age of journalism. Or right before the golden age of journalism. Sorry, the yellow age of journalism.
Yeah, we call it yellow journalism.
All the same. I share Justin's suspicion. I'm very much a structuralist in my thinking. I do not think that that human beings have like ages where we were just very sinful in this era, but now we're less sinful. I think that in the same way that humans are pretty consistently horny, we've been pretty consistently self-interested. So if something is changing in terms of the profit model, it's not just that people like became more greedy, it's that something structurally occurred.
I don't say that people became more greedy. I think something structurally has changed.
Right.
I don't think that journalists were these huge celebrities and you knew everything about their opinions on everything and they had, loyal followers. And I think journalism has, whoever you get your news from, has fundamentally changed. And whatever the causes are, I'm not sure, but I think the money is a part of it.
I mean, there's more ways to make money in journalism, and we're an example of it. There's more ways to make money in media, and we're an example of it.
We are and we aren't, though, because I think all three of us are proud of the following we've built and that we're all able to we're paying our bills, but we're not living large. We're not making Rachel Maddow, Sean Hannity, that type of money. And all three of us have acknowledged that if we decided to go full tribal, we're all pretty sure we could make a fuckload more money. And we've decided not to. So whatever that is that makes us think that if we went tribal, it would pay better, that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Isn't that kind of a cope by us?
No, I think it's absolutely true.
I don't know.
I wanted to do a thing where I would wear a Mexican wrestling mask. I'd wear a blue one and a red one, and I would just do a debate show where I would just do the thing that we always talk about, us high-minded people who have eschewed the crude world of partisan politics and instead walk on a loftier plane that just be like, okay, no, I just want to prove that I can do it because I want to prove that I could do it easily. And anytime I brought it up, friends of mine have been like, no, you'd be jeopardizing. Like, it's important that people who listen to PX30, it's important that people who listen to We're Not Wrong know that you do care about these things and you are keeping an even keel, and you, even if it's a joke, readily repeating the talking points that would be charismatic and exciting from a partisan perspective would erode that. That's the reason why I haven't done it. But I also wonder whether or not it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I don't know, like, I could have made the NFL if I really would have, if my coach would have, played me in high school. I think that we're exactly where we're at because that's the audience that we could naturally attract. I don't know if we turned on our evil sides and decided to go full partisan that we would make more money.
I can tell you already, and I want to be careful with my words here. I've had opportunities to go tribal.
Sex thing? You're being very opaque. I just want to make sure this isn't
not
a sex thing. Oh, is it not? Okay.
But it's just, I don't want to burn any bridges, but like there are opportunities I had with networks that don't want anything to do with me because I am not tribal. And I think
because you don't say the thing.
I don't say the thing. I don't say that like this tribe is better than the other. I don't embrace the label that people want me to embrace. I think you've experienced the exact same thing because you didn't say the things.
She's pointing
that the
to me,
team,
yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Andrew, like in the Fox world, like you decided to be an independent thinker and it didn't go well for you. I think I'm very proud of you for that. But like, I think we've both.
Well, the Fox world he left. It was the other gig that I think you could say that if he were more, if he had called Joe Biden a cuck a few more times.
If we had renamed the program "Drinking Liberal Tears with Andrew Heaton," I would very likely still be on there.
All right, here we go. Can we just, as a Christmas gift for everybody, just a real quick one super hot partisan take? If you were evil version of yourself, what would it sound like?
Justin, you're such a troll.
I have built up too much ego layers. I'd have to think about it.
Don't take the bait.
I was going to say, Jen, I agree that we would get paid more if we went tribalistic. I think that is because people like tribalism is something innate to people in the same way that like porn hits this innate part of human beings because we're very sexual. Tribalism does as well. So I think that it is reaching something that people viscerally react to in the same way that your local news report will do better if it is dealing with fear and blood than it is something else. In terms of the structural elements, though, of like, well, if those impulses are the same, and I think they are, what is materially changing? Competition makes sense to me, where there's kind of a race to the bottom, or you're going to have to go more visceral rather than high-minded that Justin brings up. Nobody's brought up the fairness doctrine. I would not put the fairness doctrine back in place, but smarter people than me have said that could be part of the reason that this has occurred. For people unfamiliar with it, the fairness doctrine...
Equal time.
The fairness doctrine mandated that on television and radio, any matter of public discourse, you had to do equal time for the opposing viewpoint on it. The problem that I have with this is, one, I don't want the government mandating you to talk about something affirmatively. But beyond that, given that I hate the duopoly and I hate binary thinking and dichotomous thinking and this idea that everything is red or blue, that would just firmly entrench that. So I think that would be a very bad thing. However, there are lots of people that think that it would basically force extremist media to moderate itself by having a character on it. I used to know Alan Combs, and I don't think that was a good match of Alan Combs and Sean Hannity. But if we want, we could do that. He was a nice man.
Is he dead?
Yeah. He was a good man. I think it's probably structural. Part of the other reason too with the
he now just visits Sean Hannity on Christmas Eve like Jacob Marley.
Yeah. I think the other bit too is that like in addition to competition, media became national, and so if you go back to like the '60s, most media
international.
Yeah. Most media was local. You had 3 major television stations, but your newspapers, unless you were getting the New York Times or something, you probably were getting one of multiple newspapers in your state or in your city. Mm-hmm. And when you have a locally based worldview, you have a locally based media diet. The diet can less readily fixate on bad things, which is what media is always going to fixate on. And when we started going national, where everything became a national issue, there's always something horrible happening in a country of 360, 70 million people. There's always something bad happening. So all of the news has become bad because now all of the news is national, and every single local story is a prism to some national issue of red team versus blue team. And that's all created this morass of anger and umbrage and tribalism.
All right. I want everybody to do partisan monologues, though, next year.
You'd have to give us a topic or something.
No,
Okay.
don't take that.
Yeah,
You're
let's
better
do
than
it.
this.
Come on, we'll all put on masks. That what we won't have our faces attached to.
No
it.
one would know who we are.
No one would know.
On this audio podcast, Jen, we would be wearing masks.
We'd be
so
wearing
no one would know.
masks. We have a YouTube channel now. See? It'd be fun.
Yeah. And actually, when you turn your head a certain way, Justin, it looks like you're wearing a powdered wig and that Santa hat.
I do. Yeah. No, it does look like I'm one of them fucked up English lawyers. Dictionary fan writes, God bless Briney for not being for not being afraid to ask for definitions, and thank you to Heaton for always expanding my vocabulary.
Good job, us.
Go us.
Well, hey, listeners, your 2 words of the day are schismogenesis, which is creating your beliefs based on opposition to someone else, and
Butt fucking.
butt fucking.
No, that's it. We're going there. College isn't a scam brings us home. Got to push back on Justin's comment that college is a scam and degrees are becoming increasingly worthless. Educational attainment has been shown to very strongly correlate with lifetime earnings. In 2011, the U.S. Census Bureau even put out a study showing that educational attainment impacted lifetime earnings 5 times more than other demographic factors, including gender and race. For a more recent example, the gap between college-educated earnings and non-college educated was at a historic high in 2021. I think market forces have made it too expensive, but higher education is far from a scam. Listener, I don't disagree or dispute any of your points. I do believe that a college education is oftentimes correlative with good upbringings that highlight educational attainment, that push children toward college. I do think that there is a pathway that will allow you to succeed in a way, in college very often, at least for me, was very much a part of it. That being said, I do believe that there is a tremendous financial burden that is being put on an entire generation of Americans by way of predatory student loans and either absent-minded or complicit colleges and universities who have massive endowments and continue to rake in a shit ton of money for reasons that go beyond whether or not they are getting the people that have put out gigantic financial outlays for their education the kind of reward that they were advertised and promised. That is my take. My issue is not whether or not college can be successful or is successful. I was very much benefited by my collegiate experience, not necessarily because of the stuff that I did inside classes. The vast majority of what I got of value, I learned outside of it in a parallel institution. But that being said, I can't argue with the fact that my degree has probably opened doors for me. It at least conferred legitimacy when I put it on my resume and the few times that I've had to apply for a job with a resume. And I think that if you look at what the cost of the degree that I got now, it is criminal. The fact that the Wall Street Journal, my friend Katie Stetch has written about it, that colleges take out and out predatory loans and push them onto students and families that can't afford it, that then are allowed to go back onto the parents and sue the parents for these loans that are not bankruptable, is up to the point, and for me crossing the line, of a criminal syndication and partnership. And I just want to continue to point that out, especially when we have policy conversations about forgiving student debt. The idea that we are just going to pay off the criminal kind of behavior, criminal-esque behavior that makes this possible, as opposed to reforming this system or making these loans bankruptable, which would do tremendous. I'll bet you these banks and these universities would get real smart, real fast about their admissions and the kind of degrees that they are pushing out, and the donor network, the alumni networks that are going to continue to get these people jobs. A lot of that stuff would smarten up real quick if this wasn't free money that is guaranteed by the government, which is a whole nother issue. This is a government problem. Government did make it worse by guaranteeing all of these loans. And I think that is the problem that I like to shine a spotlight on. Is college a scam? it's hyperbolic. I don't genuinely believe that it is a scam, but do I believe that borderline and, to me, over-the-line criminal behavior happens that has materially harmed this country? Yes. Yes, I do.
In the funding of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Amen.
I both agree with the email, and I agree with you, Justin, everything you just said. To add a couple of things to that, yes, college degrees are correlated with higher earning income potential. It's been that way for some time now. Why is that? What is the top factor that is valuable in a college degree economically? So like right now we're having a conversation about the economic utility of a college degree, not the spiritual benefits or the experiential side of it, the economic side of it. It's not the knowledge.
Or the thick Jaeger sauce.
The thick Jaeger sauce. It's not the knowledge that you're getting, it's the certificate you're getting. What is going to be more economically useful to somebody, getting a bachelor's degree from a state school or having unlimited access to all of the lectures from Harvard that they can't do anything with? It's just on their iPod. The answer is the state school degree. The knowledge is not as useful because we have built up a classist certification system where if you don't get one of these, you're just kind of a loser, and I guess you're fucking out of luck, dude. Should have gone to college. And that's a poor way to run a society. We ought to view college as a way to obtain knowledge, but not the only way to obtain knowledge. We shouldn't view it as a hierarchical mechanism to sort people into have and have-nots in our society. And yeah, everything Justin said about the funding mechanism. If we were to, if you wanted to have, I would put in a rule that said, if you want to receive public funding for universities, you can't pass out diplomas anymore. You only teach, like a library. Libraries are publicly funded. We don't require you to take a test to go to a library. We don't require you to get a certificate of approval when you finish the book, because knowledge is the important thing. So if we want to have just knowledge is super important, yay knowledge, great. You want public funding, you don't have diplomas anymore, it's just for knowledge. Now, that's, I realize, really, really big apple cart tipping over things. So the more realistic things would be, if you are not able to pay back your student loan, the university eats it. I think you'd find the universities would very quickly alter the rota of classes that they have at their disposal to be actually economically beneficial to students, as opposed to right now where they are incentivized to sell whatever the students want to do, irregardless of how that's going to economically benefit them in the future. And then the other thing, which would be the absolute best thing we could do, is an income sharing agreement. That would be great. If you're interested in this on a policy side, look into income sharing agreements. This is where, instead of having a loan, which I cannot discharge through bankruptcy at any point in my life, that I'm taking on at the age of 18 when I don't know what I'm going to do for a living, and compounds with interest as I get older and precludes me from owning a home or getting credit cards, all sorts of horrible shit that you carry on the rest of your life. Instead of having that, you have an income sharing agreement, and you go, I'm going to go to the University of Wisconsin, and they are going to take 2.7% of my income for a period of 10 years. If I don't make any money, they don't get any money. If I make a lot of money, they get 2.7% of it, and at the end of the 10-year period, we're all done and we all walk away. That, to me, is a far more equitable way of distributing funding for universities, or more specifically, to students that are matriculating at them.
We do have to incentivize the colleges to give a shit what happens to the student, because they don't right now. So
no, the only thing that they care about is whether or not they can bug them with phone calls about donating to the alumni network, because that's the last. Because that's something that I'm always really excited. They've learned to stop calling me, but I'm very, very like, oh, would you like to donate to the university? Like, oh, so you can sit on your endowment. They just bought, Syracuse University just bought the hotel that parents used to stay at to visit their kids, the University Sheraton. That one time during the 100th anniversary of the Daily Orange, I got so drunk, I blacked out and ran out right into a glass door. But now that's going to be a dorm. Why? Because they need more dorms to get more bodies in to cash more student loan checks.
yeah.
That's it. And their endowment allows them to buy this infrastructure. It allows them to continue to buy more and more of the surrounding infrastructure. They're the landlord for all the places that the students go and spend money. Some of those have been turned into luxury dorms that are now being purchased to be turned into real dorms. So they let private funding go and develop a building for them so they could buy it and turn it into yet another way that they can make more money off these students and enrich themselves. And that's why, I mean, I don't know, we can get back to the beginnings of the conversation last week about the anti-Semitism on campus, but I do think that part of the reason why these administrations get dragged around by a student body is because that's the only way that this goes bad for them. is if for whatever reason the negative attention on them is so high that students don't want to attend their university anymore, and the money machine gets effed with.
I saw 2 headlines recently, and I don't have them at my fingertips, so I might get slight details wrong, but Harvard and Yale, I believe, have endowments sufficiently large that they never need to charge any tuition ever again.
Harvard has $50 billion.
Yeah, like they're like the interest, the amount of money that will be generated through their investments is enough that they don't need to charge anybody. No one ever needs to pay for a Harvard degree. They have more money than some countries. And then Stanford, I want to say there are more administrators at Stanford now than there are undergraduate students. There are more employees at the university than there are students themselves.
Yeah.
And that has become an increasing phenomenon of universities expanding. Like one of the other factors that makes the main factor that is increasing tuition costs in the United States is easy money injected into the loan economy by the federal government, which all of the schools then compete on by building new things, creating new programs, so on and so forth. And they then charge more tuition, and then everybody goes, oh God, tuition's high, we need more money for loans. And that's the main factor here. But a secondary factor is the fact that we treat college as a existential, spiritual journey that you are going to remember for 4 years of your life that needs to have everything in it. A lot of the cheaper colleges that you'll find, like the Sorbonne in France, don't have that. It's just classes. It's classrooms and teachers. That's it. Their purpose is teaching. They don't have a built-in fun summer camp cult thing going on, which is wonderful and fun, and I very much enjoyed it, but that stuff costs money.
Yeah.
And if we're worried about, knowledge and vocational skills, then having all these other things are going to increase the prices.
But also with the Sorbonne, 0 SEC championships. So
good point.
Take that.
Go Big Ten.
We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. Jen, what's sizzling on the congressional dish?
So the last episode of Congressional Dish of the Year is out, and it was the hearing that I watched, which was amazing. It was the State Department telling us their real motivations for trying to prolong the war in Ukraine. So you can hear the testimony for yourself.
Peace and stability?
Yeah. No, our diplomats are not interested in peace right now, and it's wild. Rand Paul called him on it. He was like, this sounds like the Department of War, not the diplomacy wing of our government. So yeah.
We used to call it the Department of War.
Yeah.
We renamed it to the Department of State. That sounds better.
Maybe it's retro.
I thought the Defense Department was the Department
my
of
bad.
War.
You're correct. I'm sorry. You're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, our diplomats are, just trying to prolong the thing. So if you want their reasons from their own mouths, check out Congressional Dish.
Heaton, I know you are burning the midnight oil these days.
Jesus Christ. I know I say this every year. I don't know that I'm going to do another Christmas special.
Why do you keep doing this to yourself?
Because sometime around November, he's like, oh, this will be fun. And then right now he's like, I want to put a nail in both of my feet.
It is personally fulfilling for me in that I get to go, oh, yes, I am deep down a comedian, and I'm going to make this comedy package. But on top of that, I will literally get emails like about 3 months before Christmas that are like, hey, my mother died, and we always enjoyed listening to your Christmas specials. They mean so much. I'll get emails like that. I'm like, ugh, okay. I've been working on this since Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It takes about a month. So normally a program on my show takes about a week. This is a month-long thing that involves a lot of
cast of dozens.
Yeah, there's about 12 to 15 people in this. I've hired not one but 2 Michael Caine impersonators because I didn't care for the first one sufficiently. Yeah. So I hired a backup Michael Caine impersonator. There are 2 original musical numbers on this.
The first one laid an egg the size of a tangerine.
Mm-hmm. There's songs. So anybody unfamiliar with this, on the Political Orphanage, normally good, nonpartisan, thinky fun time stuff. Once a year, I do a comedy special. It is a variety show, sketch comedy program. There can be politics in it, but it's very incidental. It's all comedy. So check out the Political Orphanage's 6th annual Snuffy's Christmas special. Even if you hate all my politics, it probably won't appear in the episode at all. And would it be okay if I played a clip from last year's with you guys at the tail end of this episode so people kind of know what it is?
Yeah.
I will send you a clip from last year so that people get a feel for the kind of humor that's on the show.
And I helped.
And Justin not only helped, Justin's appeared in 5 of the 6.
Did I miss the first one?
Yeah, I don't think you were. That was
That was pre
kickoff.
us, yeah.
That was me at the Blaze with me and Jennings. That one was much smaller scale in its ambitions. But you have been on in 5 of the subsequent ones as a character and increasing your role. Last year you wrote a sketch and came in it. I modified it, but you had a sketch.
I forget which one that was.
It was Bitcoin Santa. You wrote Bitcoin Santa.
Okay.
Although the funny bit, I'm going to spoil a little bit. The funny bit on that one was you had a line in there of like, if Santa exists, does hell exist? And then I wanted to I'm like, that has to be the thing.
Gotcha.
Because now it's like, well, if Santa exists, does that mean that our atheist uncle's in hell? And Santa's like, obviously, yes. If I exist.
Now I remember this. Yeah.
You've acted in them and very much helped me working on some of the sketches. Both in, like I will like feverishly call Justin like red faced and like dripping sweat, going, I don't know what I can do. And Justin will sit down and we'll go through the sketches. And help produce one this year as well.
It was very, very exciting to do.
I was up till 3 a.m. last night. This whole week I've just been working, and Justin took one of the sketches off my plate, which I'm
very, very excited. You will hear the Christmas special on PX3 as well. I'll be playing that, but our last PX3 before Christmas is our Monday edition where we had Matt Laszlo. Have you ever talked to Matt Laszlo, Jen?
No.
He writes for Raw Story, but he's a congressional reporter.
Okay.
Wait, is
Big
that
Raw Story fans
I guess
over
Raw Story has a different connotation these days when it comes to Congress. But
It's not Raw Dog Story.
Oh, my bad. I'm thinking of the Raw Dog Gazette, which is a fine publication.
is that an example of the local media that used to exist in the golden age of journalism, the Raw Dog Gazette?
Yeah. It's published out of Senator Carden's office.
So not only did we talk about the failed last-ditch effort for this gigantic immigration plus Israel plus Ukraine plus your mom package that they were negotiating, whether or not that's going to happen in January. But also, I had him go down the top 5 things that he saw himself in Congress as somebody who roams and prowls the halls each and every day. And I broke this out as a social clip. You can see it on PX3 tweets on Twitter and on Instagram, on my Instagram. But he tells a story about one of the final days of Dianne Feinstein.
I was wondering if it would be Feinstein.
That is among the most heartbreaking. I'll do my best, but please look at the clip. It's during one of the Votaramas for, I forget what. She has to stay up all night, and she's being led out of the chamber by Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar, and Dianne Feinstein just asks where her puppy is. And she's told by Elizabeth Warren, oh, the puppy's in your office. That's where we're bringing you. The puppy needed a nap, just like you need a nap.
And then she died.
And then, I don't know when exactly that Votorama was, but obviously she died within the calendar year. But just crazy stuff, including Matt Laszlo was the one who broke the story of the motion to vacate, the motion to vacate that eventually happened. And he only knew it. He doesn't do day-by-day news. He does feature stuff. But he found the papers on the floor of the men's room.
Oh, wild.
And he took the pictures and put them up there. And at that point, it wasn't his story anymore. So everybody else out-reported him on it. But he could have owned the story if he didn't immediately just post the pictures on Twitter. So
I was wondering if you were going to say Feinstein because you knew that people had to be watching them dragging her around. There had to be. It
was
stories.
An open secret and he was saying that he would talk to her about her own legislation and she would have no idea what he was talking about. The lights were out with her for a long time, but again, a great conversation. I gave it to him last minute. Was like, hey, top five things that you've seen, and he's great. He's very much a character. And nice. I think everybody would enjoy it. So go ahead and check out PX3, Politics. But for all of you listening and watching, this is Justin Robert Young for Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney. We're not wrong.
Great episode.